Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing on Sunday afternoon. Joining us from Philadelphia, where he's at the Wells Fargo Center, where the Sixers are playing the Jazz, one of the biggest games of the NBA calendar, is Tim Bontemps.
I might have been at the most exciting and relevant game of the regular season on Saturday night with our guy Mac 10 and our guy the machine Kevin Pelton, and I might be at game 1280 of 80 today. It's in
the room that you're in at the Wells Fargo Center, which is a very nondescript room, is a perfect symbol for the 76ers.
I had to do a lot of work to find a room for the pod because the Flyers are playing this afternoon, and a lot of the rooms in the center were booked. So
I see.
We found one though eventually.
Well, here's a guy who's, I'm sure, rooted for the Flyers growing up, Philadelphia native, joining us from New York today, where he is with the Los Angeles Lakers, our Lakers man, Dave McMenamin.
Happy to be here with you both. And I didn't really root for the Flyers because they were always the team with the ridiculous payroll. Lindros and LeClaire and Brindamore, but they were the team with the crazy payroll that always failed. And I rooted for like the underdog teams in Philadelphia that failed anyway, but they didn't fail because of money. The Flyers failed. They had the most expensive roster, but couldn't do anything.
The most Philadelphia take ever. I rooted against a team for this reason, even though it was in my hometown.
I don't
find ice hockey very relatable either.
Well, I don't know anything about it. To be honest with you, I don't know anything about it. I can't.
The guy does have a Phillies hat on today.
He does. It's a good-looking Phillies hat.
Overachievers, the 93 Phillies. Underachievers, the Flyers.
The Phillies spend no money on their team, I don't think.
I was going to say, I think Bryce Harper makes
things have
quite a bit
changed.
of money.
I live in Los Angeles now. I've changed my standards. But back in the day when I was a kid,
All right. Well, we had a high standard. Did you like that? How about that, guys? We had a high standard for the game on Saturday night. And halfway through the fourth quarter, I thought we were going to get it. Luka was in the game, making the run. The Celtics were doing the thing that they do, which is they play brilliantly, and then they take their foot off the gas. And they were in the process of having a very Celtics game. And then midway through the fourth quarter, LeBron pulled up lame, Dave. And it was still a very interesting game. We're going to talk about it. We learned some things from it. But now one of the biggest questions in the NBA is the severity and what sort of lingering effects LeBron's leg injury is going to have. So I saw what you reported yesterday. Who knows what you may know by the time this podcast runs. But LeBron having a groin injury is obviously concerning. It's going to be something that they're going to have to manage.
Brian, it was a big blow, and you knew that was somewhat serious when he goes to the back and doesn't come back and go into the game because, as he told us post-game, he lives for moments like that. A 4-point game at Boston Garden, you can count on one hand how many games he has left in that building in his career. Maybe if there's some finals matchups, it's going to require more than one hand, but this is a precious commodity to be in that situation. And the injury kept him out of things. And I'm reporting that it's going to be most likely multiple weeks. He's going to let that kind of injury calm down a bit. And then there's going to be some further evaluation to get a full extent of the severity of the strain. But it's a tough moment because Rui Hachimura is out for at least another week, as JJ Redick told us on Saturday. Jackson Hayes, they hope to get back on this current road trip, but obviously he's dealing with knee soreness. And Luka is a little banged up himself from a fall that he took in the New York game, and he was wincing as he was working his back out against the Celtics. So they are not in a great place health-wise. It's a good thing they did all this work up to this moment to surge up the Western Conference standings. They still won 20 of their last 25 games, even with this loss to the Celtics. But now it's a different math that we're talking about for the remainder of the season. It's about what you can do to perhaps still host a first-round playoff series while the biggest priority is having LeBron James right for the start of the postseason.
Yeah, this is the nature of the NBA, specifically the Western Conference right now. It's just fragile. So, they're absolutely flying high. They look great. Jackson Hayes going down really affected them, especially with Rui Hachimura out. When you watch this game, we'll talk to you about this in a second, Bontemps, but you watch this game, even though Kristaps Porzingis didn't play for the Celtics, you could very clearly tell the Celtics game plan was to take advantage of the Lakers' lack of size in the interior. I mean, LeBron was playing center for big stretches of the game. Luka was playing center at times out there, and so now that they're just really thin with big bodies. I felt that they lost the game because of their lack of offense. Despite how the Celtics were able to take advantage of mismatches, it wasn't like the Lakers got cooked on defense. Jason Tatum was great; he had 40 points. But they couldn't generate enough points, and so that's going to be on Luka's shoulders. Maybe Luka's sore back a little bit because he's going to have to just score. Bontemps, what did we learn from this matchup? What do you take away from how that 10-point win for the Celtics played out?
I mean, certainly I think watching the game, like you said, we saw the Celtics again get a 20-point lead against one of the other 5 best teams in the league. They've done that against the Cavs, the Nuggets, the Knicks, and now the Lakers. And they have the Thunder coming in, the other one of the top 6 teams in the league, on Wednesday to the Garden. So we'll see how it goes in that game. So I thought more or less we saw the Celtics be who they've been all season. I do think from the Lakers side, seeing them in person for the first time since the trade, JJ Redick deserves a ton of credit for how hard he has these guys playing defensively. Like we've talked about, they don't have a lot of, necessarily, they don't have an overwhelming a lot of defensive talent, especially when they're going to try to have, the combination of Luka and Austin Reeves and LeBron all out there at the same time, though LeBron's been really engaged at that end of the court. But you saw in this game, to me, the thing that's allowed them to be so good defensively is that they've been playing so hard and with so much energy and flying around and, really being committed to the scheme that JJ wants them to play. And I think as you saw this game go on, you saw the Lakers get a little heavy-legged in the second half, being down a couple of guys, having to play to such
I thought LeBron
looked
looked tired even before the groin injury. I thought he looked.
Yeah. There was one point we looked up and 4 of the 5 Lakers on the court, this was early in the fourth quarter, all had their arms at their sides, holding themselves.
Sorry to interrupt you,
Bontemps, but they were gassed.
And the Lakers have done a good job in transition over the past few weeks, and the Celtics got out in transition a bunch in this game as it went along too. But you did see the wear and tear on the Lakers as the game went on. And yes, they're obviously down Jackson Hayes and Rui, and having two of your top 7 guys not playing, you're going to feel it from an energy standpoint. But I do think we saw a little bit of the challenges that they're going to have when they're playing in a 7-game series against higher level teams, because they're going to have to play at that kind of frenetic pace to really be able to hang, I think, defensively. And, we'll see if LeBron can hold up. I mean, it's remarkable. We're talking about a guy in his age 40 season. He missed 4 games. It's impressive he'd made it this far without any kind of muscle injury. And certainly, hopefully, this is on the shorter end of the timeline, because it's been great to watch these guys play. But, they're I think 1 loss ahead of Denver, 2 ahead of Memphis, and 3 ahead of Houston. And, those 4 teams are going to be jockeying for position over the next couple of weeks. And we'll see where that lands. But like I said, I thought the Lakers defense was impressive and their energy level was impressive. And as you mentioned, as the game went on, there's a lot of shots that have to be made by guys who are not necessarily reliable 3-point shooters. Those shots went in the first half. They didn't, especially in the third quarter. And that ultimately was the difference in the game.
Yeah, Dave, you in your reporting, you, of course, you had to mention the fact that LeBron had that groin injury like 5-6 years ago, that Christmas Day game. I think the Lakers, I know we repeated that stat like 100 times, because weren't they like famously in second place in the West?
I think they were 4th. They were 4th.
Oh, they were 4th. Okay. LeBron was going across the lane on defense. He took a funny step, and basically the Lakers season was never the same. They ended up missing the playoffs. He came back and then shut it back down. That was a groin injury. It was the first time he'd ever really had a significant muscle injury in his career. It was sort of an indication that his late 30s or his mid 30s, I guess, had arrived when that happened. But you asked him about that, or somebody asked him about that, and you had it in your reporting, what he said comparing the feel of the injuries.
Yeah, he said that it did not feel in the moment as severe as that one. That caused him to miss 17 straight games and really compromised the rest of his season and the rest of the Lakers season, that they didn't make the playoffs that year. After he said it, though, he turned around and knocked on the wooden locker behind him to not jinx his self-diagnosis. Listen, it wasn't like he was dour and completely upset and frustrated. I think he was presenting kind of a veneer of confidence that we've already proven that this group can do a lot. We are up for the competition. This is the next challenge that we have to tackle while I take care of my body. And his kind of parting message was, I'm waiting for the moment that we're all whole and we can compete together. And certainly he anticipates that moment coming before it's too late. And so there's still a lot of noise that this team can make. It's just a different pathway than it had been hoping it would be taking. And I guess if you want to go glass half full, this is a brutal stretch of the season coming up, and it could have taxed LeBron in ways other than this groin injury popping up. And so while he will be rehabbing it, the groin, perhaps it saves some energy in his legs that he can apply to a postseason run.
The other thing I should say that we learned about the game was that Al Horford still's got it as a player.
That's what you wrote about after the game.
Celtics earlier. Yeah, I mean, look, it was noteworthy. You knew Joe Mazzulla was going to try to win this game when Al Horford played 11 minutes in the first quarter. Al Horford had played over 35 minutes in 2 games this season. Before Saturday night's game, played 37 minutes, just under the 37 and a half he played against the Cavs a couple weeks ago. Another game the Celtics, played their guys in part because Kristaps Porzingis wasn't available like he wasn't last night. But the numbers from Stats Williams that I wrote about on Al Horford's defense in this game were awfully impressive. He defended 23 isolation plays, according to Second Spectrum, all against Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and Austin Reeves, the 3 perimeter stars for the Lakers, and gave up the second lowest points per play on them, 0.39, in the player tracking era. And the 23 he guarded was the second most anyone's ever guarded in a game in the player tracking era, which goes back to the 2013-14 season, which is an awfully long time ago. And LeBron James and Luka Doncic were 3 for 14 in their 14 shots against Al Horford in this game. And we have seen Al Horford. All of us have covered Al Horford for a long time. And last night was
his 18th season.
Game. Well, it's his 18th season. It was his 68th game against LeBron. It's the most times any 2 players currently have played against each other. Not surprisingly, given they're both 2 of the older players in the league and were both in the same conference for most of their careers. But it was remarkable to see Horford doing what he did in that game. And it's a reminder that for all the other talent the Celtics have, Al Horford's ability to switch and protect the rim on defense and to be a excellent floor spacing 3-point shooter on offense really remains one of the very most critical things that makes the Celtics who they are as a team. And despite the fact that the guy is 38 and going to be 39 in the summer, he is still a gigantic part of their team and was a gigantic part of them winning this game. And, it's a sign of what is still going to be a really big role for him in the spring, whether Kristaps Porzingis is healthy or not.
Well, that's one of the things. It's one of the reasons why Porzingis' acquisition was so important, because 2 years ago, Horford's last game sort of is the start, not last game, but he was the start. He was their starting center. He wore down in the playoffs. It got to the point where he basically was only defending. On offense, he was kind of resting. Maybe he could hit a shot, but he basically couldn't, he just couldn't, he wasn't effective down the stretch, and especially in that Miami series where they lost. So being able to be more of a spot contributor and conserve his energy within games. This is one of the reasons why they identified Porzingis as the guy they wanted so bad. And, the trade that they made for Porzingis just before the draft, or because it was just before free agency in 2023. You know, the deal was going to be before the draft. The deal fell apart, and they hurried and re-put it back together and did it with Memphis instead of who was it? Was going to be with Washington and ended up being with Memphis.
It was the same trade. It was the same trade. They just couldn't trade Marcus. They traded Marcus Smart instead of Malcolm Brogdon in the deal because they had to get it done before the draft because Kristaps had a player option and he opted either in or out and signed a new deal. I don't remember exactly how it
went. But that ended up being a very important trade in this current era of the NBA. We didn't totally understand it at the time. I mean, we understood why they were doing it, but we didn't really know what the impact would be. But anyway, your point is correct on Horford. He was clearly a major part of that game plan. And that's the thing, Dave. Like, obviously, know the Lakers are small. But okay, so it's one thing to only have Jackson Hayes. When they didn't have Hachimura, like not having Hachimura just takes a tool out of JJ Redick's belt. And I agree that they are, I remember the Heat teams that LeBron was on in the early teens. They would play a very, very aggressive style of defense. It was one of the reasons Chris Bosh was so important to that team. They would play Bosh at center, and he was so mobile. They would ask him to do a lot. They would ask him to really move his backside on defense, and they would trap aggressively. And basically the way to handle that Heat defense was to pass your way through it. And the Heat's basically long-term wager was that you couldn't pass your way through it as much as they could create a problem. That's why they would create all these turnovers. And the Lakers don't play the exact same way, but it's kind of the same concept, which is their athleticism, which is what they have. They don't have great size to defend the rim, but they have athleticism. And their wager is that their athleticism and their transition opportunities are going to cause for it, are going to on balance beat you. And by the way, it was working for the Heat. It led them to 2 championships, and they were in the finals in the third when they faced arguably the greatest passing team we've ever seen. And the Spurs also were just super hot shooting. Danny Green was like untouchable for the first 3 games of that series. And, but one of the things the Spurs did.
There's a slightly different level of defensive talent on this Laker team compared to the prime LeBron.
But it wasn't the prime Heat. The Heat were worn out, and the Spurs were the perfect team to undercut them.
Sure.
And so I think the point here is if you can pass, you can move the ball, which the Celtics do. If you can move the ball, that's what you're going to have to do against the Lakers. You're going to have to move the ball to beat their athleticism. Now when they're thin, Dave, you're going to give up inside interior matchups. And there were times where the Celtics were able to get to the rim and there was nobody there to provide.
There were a couple of times where there's a closeout where they overcommit and the Celtics player puts the ball on the floor, and now the help defender trying to cut off the lane to the rim is someone like Austin Reeves or even Jared Vanderbilt, who's a very active defender, but he doesn't have the size. And Trey Zem's in the third. The Lakers had been 13-0 when he played before Saturday night against the Celtics. A lot of that was garbage time minutes, but he was actually carving out a bit of a backup center role during that 8-game winning streak. But all of a sudden, he's thrust into a bigger role with no Jackson Hayes. He's not as effective, and so they're really gonna need to have Jackson and Rui to give them some more size to contend with that stuff. So it's not just all switching dependent, where you can, because some of the success they've had, or a lot of the success they've had since January 30th, when they've been the #1 defensive rated team in the league since then, has been defending shots at the rim. And Jackson Hayes is in the top 3 in terms of opponents' field goal percentage on layups and dunks in that time, under 40%. So that's a big piece that they're going to need to get back. But it does kind of underscore the rescinded trade. They were going out
if they had Mark
a
Williams
big
in this game,
center. Right.
If they had Mark Williams, and I kind of feel like at the end of the Lakers season, wherever that is, it's going to end up being a relevant question. If they had Mark Williams, would it have gone this way? We don't know.
I don't know. I mean, Mark Williams is much more of a skilled offensive center than a skilled defensive center. I know he's big, but I almost think the way that
but
Jackson
there were times
Hayes
where their
played,
tallest guy last night on the court was 6'8".
I understand that, but I would almost argue that the way Jackson Hayes has played is sort of a reminder that investing a lot, which they were going to be doing, investing a lot in a center with both injury questions and developmental questions as a guy, like, can he actually be the kind of rim protecting force that you want if you're going to invest that kind of capital in him? It's a reminder that if you've got Luka Doncic and LeBron James, two of the smartest and highest IQ players ever, and you've got a guy like Jackson Hayes who's been a journeyman player who can, the one thing he's always been able to do is jump out of the gym, like, can probably manufacture a lot of production from the 5 spot.
But the point was they didn't have Jackson Hayes. That's the point. They didn't have Jackson Hayes.
No,
and that's why you want to
I
have
don't mean last
man.
night. No, I don't mean last night. I'm saying in general. Like, yes, last night they didn't have any center, but I'm saying from a broader, like Brian said, that the end of the season is going to be a relevant point of whether they had Mark Williams on the team. My point, I guess, is what I'm saying is if you have Luka Doncic in particular, he can boost the level of a center in a way that almost no other player in the league can. And so the Lakers have limited trade resources. If they go out this summer and use those trade resources to improve the rest of the roster, and they find a couple different centers that can do different things for cheap, I just think that would be a better allocation of resources than pouring them all into one guy who has had trouble staying on the court and is not a guaranteed effective defensive option.
That's all a fair point. That's all a fair point. But when they did the Mark Williams when they rescinded it, we didn't really know how good they were going to be. And so ultimately, medium term, what they can use those assets for, what they do at the center position, they may end up being better off. But they also could have had Mark Williams. The trade was agreed to. And so, I'm not even debating whether they should have rescinded it or not. I'm just saying when they get to where they're going in this season, it's going to be a thing that's a fair thing to ask. It's not a hypothetical. They had him. He was acquired. So, all right. So Dave, things have changed since the last time you were in New York City a little bit. Wasn't that where you were when the Luka trade went down?
That's right. We were at the game. We were both at the game.
Yeah.
Best game of the season for the Lakers. That was such a night. Remember talking to all the Lakers. That was their best win. They were all fired up to get AD back in the next few days. They were feeling great. Everybody was in a great mood. Then I walked out of the building, and Dave called me and said, "Check your phone." I looked at my phone, and everything changed.
Yeah. You guys both called me within like 7 seconds of each other. I was getting ready to go to bed. I'm like, I'm not taking these calls. Why are you both calling me?
We all ended up. There wasn't a lot of sleep for. Not a lot of sleep for Window that night.
That's true. All right, neither for you guys. All right, we'll see how the Lakers road trip continues. We'll see what the reports are on LeBron. They play in Brooklyn on Monday, and then it's off to Milwaukee and Denver. So, it'll be
hardest remaining schedule in the NBA for BPI, the Lakers.
Yeah. So
they got a stretch of 6 games in 8 days that starts with that Denver Milwaukee back-to-back, or Milwaukee Denver, I should say. And there's 2 games against Denver and 2 games against the Bucks in that stretch. So you have to imagine they come back down to earth a little bit in the standings. I'm just questioning beyond the idea of, okay, you want to be healthy come April 15th or whatever the start of the playoffs is, and that's the most important thing. I truly believe that. Is have they really gotten a sense of continuity with this group yet? I know they had the 8-game winning streak, but even in that 8-game winning streak, Austin Reeves was missing for a couple of games. So there hasn't been a ton of time for LeBron, Luka, and Austin Reeves in particular, who are going to be all the decision makers. The ball's going to be in their hands to coalesce as best as they could. That could be the ultimate thing that hits them the most from this time that LeBron misses, assuming he comes back healthy and ready to contribute, is just, they're a team that doesn't have the experience with one another, and they're going to miss a couple weeks of that experience on the positive end, on the optimistic end.
Meanwhile, if you're Boston, you're still sleeping well. I think you're still feeling good about yourself.
They feel great. I mean, again, they're 3-1 against 4 of the 5 best teams in the league. The 5th one is coming on Wednesday. and they've had their whole team available for one of the games, and they've led all of them by at least 20. I think it underscores what they're capable of doing. And the one thing I will say, you mentioned the second half of that game, Joe Mazzulla played Jason Tatum 45 minutes, Jalen Brown 41 minutes, Al Horford 37 minutes. You saw in the Cavs game, he played those guys heavy minutes. Cavs played the normal rotation. Celtics got tired down the stretch of that game. Now, they were missing Drew Holiday. They were missing Kristaps Porzingis, but they got tired. Cavs came back and got him. That was certainly the direction that game was going again Saturday night before LeBron got hurt, and then the Celtics hit some shots late and won. But, the minutes are going to be different across the board in the playoffs, but it's just interesting to see that happening. And, Joe Mazzulla playing Jason Tatum 45 minutes in Saturday night.
Tatum and Brown's minutes for the season are up, right, from last year.
Yes, they are.
So
yes, they are.
Dave loves talking about minutes. It's one of his favorite topics. Okay. I will say this. Celtics are the Celtics. We'll never know what would happen if LeBron came in for his last shift. So Celtics are my favorites. They should remain the favorites, but don't turn off the TV when they get up 20.
Well, the Lakers
when they get up 20, because they will.
I thought you were going to the stock ESPN position of the path to the finals is there for the Lakers, baby. Sign it up.
Well,
all right, Charles Barkley, can you just chill out?
Lakers are the
Charles.
Lakers are an underdog.
I just thought he was going to, but the Lakers are right there, and that's all.
The Lakers are an underdog.
The Lakers have been awfully impressive. Because
of the team we're going to talk about right now. The Thunder win by 24 today at home against the Nuggets. The game was closer than the actual final. The Thunder had a huge fourth quarter, pulled away. I almost feel like this game was more about the Nuggets than about the Thunder, not to focus on the team 100%. That loses. The big thing coming out of this game for Denver, well, first off, let's just pause for 1 second before we talk about this game and discuss what happened on Friday night. Now, granted, this was an overtime game, so there were a few extra minutes in this.
Let's not minimize the 30-20-20.
I understand. But in case you missed it, I don't know how you could. Phoenix was, I think, was in Denver. And on Friday night, Nikola Jokic did something that never happened before. He played 45 minutes in that game. So it wasn't like he played 53. 31 points, 21 rebounds, 22 assists. Absolutely jaw-dropping 30-20-20 performance. After the game was kind of nonchalant about it.
What is he not? He's always nonchalant.
I know. Clearly, but things haven't worked out for Phoenix at all this year, and they lose a game where the other guy goes 30-20-20.
After drawing assists. And after they make this crazy comeback in the final moments of the game and drew up this incredible out of bounds play where basically they threw it into Devin Booker, and there was only 1 or 2 seconds left. So you think, Devin Booker's definitely going to shoot the ball. So Denver just collapsed to him, and they designed it to where they were going to collapse to him, and he just did a touch pass to Kevin Durant in the corner, who had a wide open corner three. It was I hadn't really seen a play like that before. It was an incredible design, ties the game. Thinking, man, is this going to be a huge win for Phoenix? And then Jokic comes out in overtime and just says, "Yeah, it's time for me to dominate."
They had a unique play design for Durant on a last-second play about 10 days ago. I don't remember who they were playing, but I remember it was the night of the Mavericks Lakers game, because I was watching the end of it at Crypto, and they needed a 3 to force overtime, and they had Durant stand at the foul line and catch the ball because they weren't guarding him inside the foul line. They designed the play to have him catch the ball at the foul line so he could get a clean catch, and then he by design dribbled outside the 3-point line and got off a 3. It was kind of weird, but that was the way they designed it. So somebody's doing some inventive stuff in the huddle for Phoenix, but it's not resulting in wins, unfortunately. But Booker had 34 in that game, and Durant had 29, and they still lost. And that's another bad night for Phoenix. But Anyway, so Denver goes to Oklahoma City today. The big thing in this game, other than Shea has another, I mean, it was being billed as like the showdown of the two MVP performers because they play twice. It's a baseball series. They play today, Sunday afternoon, and then tomorrow they play again. Yeah. And so it was sort of being billed as this MVP, you know, who's gonna take the edge. I never looked at it that way. But
right, you SGA really didn't? Why?
Because I don't judge MVP voting on one or two games head to head.
Well, sure, but it's part of the conversation.
Dave, you know his position on this is going to be. Come on.
Anyway,
something that's actually interesting. Come on, man.
No, I think it's interesting because it's a potential Western Conference Finals matchup. That's why it's interesting.
Oh, it can be both. It can be interesting for both reasons.
Well, it's
Brad.
not. So let me just ask you this. So Shea had 41 points today. If Jokic had 42, would I be like saying, "Oh,
in a win,
Jokic is the favorite now"?
In a win where his team outscored the other team by 20 points in the fourth quarter, yeah, I think that would be something that you should note when it comes time to filling out your ballot. When it comes time for Tim knocking on your door asking for what your ballot's going to look like for his next draw poll.
Yeah. Well, listen,
I would have noted
for as great as the game was on Friday. I mean, the thing that, like you said earlier, this game was more about the Nuggets than the Thunder. It was more about the Nuggets than the Thunder because Aaron Gordon hurt his calf again.
That's right.
And Nikola Jokic had 14 points on 6 for 11 shooting in the first quarter, landed on his right elbow funny, and then was not very good. I mean, he put up huge numbers because he always does.
He was pedestrian.
He didn't hit a shot. Yeah, he didn't hit a shot until I think midway through the third quarter and did not look like nearly the same player. And for the same reasons we were just talking about with the Lakers, right? Denver has a hard schedule down the stretch. They've got the 5th or 6th hardest schedule. Memphis just loses Jaren Jackson Jr. They've got one of the 10 hardest schedules remaining in the league. They're a game back also. You've got all these teams jockeying around with potentially significant injury questions. And by the way, the Rockets have a pretty soft schedule and are only one game back from there. So
did you see the Rockets injury they had Saturday night?
Play a huge part of this. What's that?
Do you know what happened Saturday night with the Rockets? Did you see that?
I mean, I was a little busy, but I know what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah. Ime Udoka.
You should tell the listeners, though.
Yeah, you were covering the Lakers. I get it. The Rockets were comfortably ahead by 20 points, and Ime Udoka put Amen Thompson in the game to try to get. He needed a rebound, right? He needed one rebound for his first ever triple-double. And they put him in the game on, there was a free throw going on, and the Rockets were defending the free throw, whatever. And literally on the following possession, he sprained his ankle, made a drive, just a classic freak play. He went up to take, John, I can't remember if he jumped to pass or jumped to shoot, but he landed on another player's foot and rolled his left ankle. I don't think it's like a severe ankle injury. However, he's, the Rockets have been in a bit of a free fall because of injuries to Fred VanVleet and Alperen Şengün. And now, it was quite blatantly.
He was only plus 39 in 33 minutes against the Pelicans on Saturday. Yeah. Kind of an important player for them.
Yeah. Quite blatant. I mean, the broadcast acknowledged when he came in the game. The Rockets broadcast acknowledged that's why he was coming in. It's not like a controversial statement to say that's why.
No, for sure.
Brian, did you cover Ricky Davis hunting that triple-double?
I did.
Was that when he was on? You did.
Yeah.
This year before that was LeBron, in 2000. Right?
Yeah, right. But I covered some of the games that the beat writer didn't want to cover. I covered. Also, the Olympics were that year, and the beat writer for the Akron Beat Control at the time went to cover the Olympics because the Cavs were such a bleep show. He would much rather spend a month in Salt Lake City. And so, yes, I covered that game. And the best part about the game was to be honest with you, when I saw it happen, I didn't compute what Ricky Davis was doing. Let me tell you who it computed for. Mr. Jerry Sloan. Because he was enraged. And after the game, this was a different era, 2002. Like, we didn't have social media or anything. I didn't know that he went crazy to the Jazz beat writers. I went to talk to Ricky Davis about it. Meanwhile, at the time, like the coaches could do press conferences at the same time. Anyway, long story short, Jerry Sloan, writers from that night who covered that game won awards for their stories because of how, I'm not even exaggerating, because of how amazing Jerry Sloan was. And I wish I had the quotes up now, but he obliterated Ricky Davis in a way that you just don't see ever. And I didn't get it. I think, I was young and stupid. I'd only covered maybe 12 NBA games in my career at that point. I didn't understand what he was doing. But the Cavs had 17 wins that year. They had like nothing good happen to them, and they actually were winning that game. And I think like DeJuan Wagner, who was their rookie, had a big game that night too. It was like this big night for the Cavs. This could be their future. And yeah, so yes, I was there for that. And that would have been a more appreciated, I think, than the guy spraining his ankle. But the point that you're making, Bontemps, is that these contenders have injuries to some of their key players. That's happening, and so Aaron Gordon already missed a whole bunch of time this year with a calf injury. He leaves this game in the first quarter with a calf injury. And you could just see that Denver was just playing from a deficit the rest of the game. They just couldn't match up. Even though Chet Holmgren was in foul trouble, they basically had to play Michael Porter Jr. Well, they played Zeke Naji a lot as sort of filling in, and Zeke Naji had 3 points and 1 rebound in 23 minutes. And so they played Michael Porter Jr. They sort of needed more out of him, and he did, try to rebound more. You could definitely tell that he was trying to play more of a rebounding role, and he had 15 rebounds, and that's great. But clearly, Oklahoma City attacked him, and all you need to see is the plus minus, because Aaron Gordon plays 7 minutes, he's +4. Now, look, 7 minutes. Jokic plays 41 minutes, he's -13. Okay, all right. Porter is -33, and it's not necessarily just about him, but it has to do with the fact that when you don't have Aaron Gordon and you have to take Jokic off the court for a few minutes any game, that's always been the issue. You take Jokic off the court when you also don't have Aaron Gordon, their team just collapses, especially in a night where they're not having it. Like Jamal Murray had an off shooting night. And, look, I am not looking to enter the world where I'm quarreling about the value of Russell Westbrook, because he undoubtedly brings certain things to that team, especially speed, and he has a good chemistry with Jokic. But when Westbrook is out there, it makes it easier for the defense. It just does. It just is. And in this game, he's 1 of 9. And when he's out there, the other team, Dave, you saw this last week when the Lakers won in Denver.
The book, especially, and he took the bait.
Yeah. Well, he always takes the bait. I shouldn't say always, but he frequently takes the bait.
And that allowed the Lakers to attack the paint the way they wanted to. And he did make a couple in a row. That game was remarkable that the Lakers disciplined to stick with JJ's game plan after he made a couple. I think Gordon even made a couple as well. But Russell Westbrook, I agree. He's brought an edge to that team and a preparedness every night. And certainly the athleticism is still there at this stage of his career. But there are some major gaps in his game that can be exploited.
Yeah, and
Tim, you and I in our story that we run every Friday where we talk to people across the league, we had some stuff about Westbrook's minutes this week too.
Yeah, we talked after watching the Nuggets play last Sunday in Boston. We talked to a bunch of people about Christian Brown and Russell Westbrook getting left open and the Nuggets trying to deal with that. And, there was some mixed opinion about whether that would be an issue. And certainly having a cheat code like Nikola Jokic can fix a lot of things, right? But the one thing that has been always consistent about Denver is that Aaron Gordon is the one guy outside of Jokic, but you got Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, and Jokic, and they don't really have a replacement for any one of those 3 guys. And if they're missing any one of them, or like when Jamal Murray wasn't playing to the level earlier this season, they have huge problems. And, Zeke Naji has been better lately. He's gotten some extended run with when Gordon was hurt the last time, and he's had some good productive minutes for them. But if they're relying on Zeke Naji to play instead of Aaron Gordon against the Thunder, they're going to be in trouble. And like that, that's obviously an automatic thing to say, but this is the second or third time Aaron Gordon has hurt his calf. And, we've talked a lot about Luka's calf injuries this season and over the last couple of years. It's a very tricky injury. Jamal has dealt with that in the past too. And it's going to be something to monitor no matter how long he's out going forward, because he's obviously such an enormous piece of their team. And this is the kind of thing that even if you come back from it, it can pretty easily flare up again. And if that happens in a month, or 2 months, then Denver's hopes of a deep playoff run are going to be in a whole lot of trouble.
The Lakers had this incredible midseason trade. There are 2 top 75 players playing with each other now in a major market where people all over the world care. That is why we talk about it.
There were 2 top 75 players playing together, and now there's only 1.
Actually. I understand. Just let me talk about the big picture here.
I'm just messing around. I don't want to give short shrift to Dave's guy AD.
That's right.
Okay, but it's true. There were 270, but the ceiling was raised.
Yes,
okay, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Fair point.
Of course.
Okay. Just because we talk about the Lakers a lot and because there's a lot of interest in the Lakers, at least for me, does not mean that anything has been taken away from the Thunder. And I've been saying for weeks, and I'm not saying you haven't been, Bontemps. I've been saying for weeks, the Thunder, the Thunder, the Thunder. Yes, it's very interesting with the Warriors. It's very interesting with the Lakers.
I've heard a lot of from Brian that the Thunder are not necessarily feared by everybody. I've heard that.
And I'm just saying, why? I mean, Chet Holmgren played 26 minutes in this game. Now, granted, Aaron Gordon went out. He was in foul trouble the whole game. And if you're a Denver fan, you've been screaming, "What about the Westbrook foul?" Yes, there was a foul in the fourth quarter of this game. Was it the third? It was the early fourth quarter.
No, it was about 10 minutes to go in the fourth, and he hit him in the head and should have fouled out and didn't get called. And then Malone got a tech and was not happy.
All you need to know is that Steve Javie came in and admitted it was a missed call. I respect Steve Javie, but we don't hear from him very often that it was a missed call. Steve Javie came in and said, yes, that was a foul. Yes, Holmgren should have fouled out with 10 minutes left. Yes, got it. Check. He played 26 minutes in this game. He was plus 32. Shea missed 9 threes in this game. He has weeks where he doesn't miss 9 threes. They win by 24. This team is a beast.
They're really good.
An absolute beast.
They're really good. It was interesting, though, because we did talk about the Lakers, and I do think, the interesting ripple effect of this LeBron injury is I think it makes, like we've just discussed with the schedule, right? There's a very real possibility the Lakers could be falling all the way to 5th. That wouldn't be shocking at all if LeBron misses a while. But it certainly is very plausible that they're not going to finish 2nd or 3rd anymore. And, it was interesting watching the Lakers play the Celtics. They did not let the Celtics just bomb away from 3, which they've basically been doing throughout the past 6 weeks. They've given up, as Dave knows better than anybody, they've given up more threes just about than any team in the league as they've been on this hot streak defensively. But you watch this Thunder game today, and yes, they ended up winning by 20, but Denver went to some zone in the second half, and especially at the end of the third quarter, and they got themselves back in the game because the Thunder got some clean looks from 3 and just couldn't knock any of them down. And that does remain the thing that we have to watch with this Thunder team when they get in the playoffs is, are they going to have, are these supporting players, Lou Dort and Aaron Wiggins and, Chet Holmgren, all these guys around Shea, are they going to hit enough threes to prevent teams from just saying, hey, we're going to pack the paint. We're going to let Shea, try to limit Shea from doing everything he can, and we're going to dare some of these guys to hit shots. That was a formula that saw Dallas beat them last year. Certainly a formula if they play the Lakers, say, in the second round. The Lakers are certainly going to say, I'm sure, hey, we're going to dare Alex Caruso and, Lou Dort and some of these guys to hit shots and beat us. And it's going to be interesting to see if the Thunder can do so in a big spot.
They got 2. They had 2 over a 3-day span in Oklahoma City, similar to this kind of OKC deal. Yeah, it's like it's right. I think it's right before they go to Dallas for the return game for Luka. So it's something like, yeah. Yeah, it's April 6th and 8th, and then they play the 9th in Dallas. So yeah, big moment right there. And they played them pretty early on in the year, and Max Christie made a mistake late in the game, misheard what JJ was asking for, fouled when they didn't want to foul, and they ended up losing a tight game. And I know that it's a much different Lakers team now, but that Lakers team prior to the trades that they made, that took some wind out of their sails, because it was a game that they were kind of getting amped up for as the measuring stick game. And the Thunder out executed them, out toughed them. They went and took the fight to them in LA. And yeah, again, I don't know how much we'll be able to glean from these games in April until we see what version of the Lakers are on the court.
All right, Dave, the game it was a game you were at on Thursday night where there was some significant news that happened. The Knicks started their West Coast trip against the Lakers in LA. It was a much anticipated game. Lots of excitement in and around the Laker bench in that game. And what I mean by that is you talking to Larry David pregame. Which made the pod on Thursday night, Dave. I hope
we covered that in depth on the Hoop Collective on Friday.
I had a listener of the pod come up to me at the baggage claim at Logan around midnight. I got in pretty late on Friday, and the first thing he wanted to talk to me about was the interaction. I assumed, he must have saw it on my Instagram. Okay. No, I heard the guys talking about it on the pod. So yeah,
I just have to say, I want to frame this. Dave McMenamin, in his vows at his wedding last summer, which were beautifully written, Dave. I'd like to say that to
Thank you.
They were. They were great. The whole thing was
I'm not joking. I'm being real. I'm just being real.
As am I. The whole thing was great.
Quoted Larry David. This is the kind of status.
This is accurate.
That his father was standing right there, but I think Dave, sort of sees Larry as this.
Oh, he's like my muse for sure. Yeah, 100% my role model. Yeah. So I got a chance to meet him in 2009. He comes to NBA games pretty regularly. I'm sure I've covered a dozen games over the years that he's been at, and he's been at many more that I wasn't covering. 2009, he was sitting in that same seat, courtside, right next to the Lakers bench. And he gets there very early, and he was talking to Alex McKechnie, who was the Lakers' head of kind of training and performance at the time. Now he works for the Raptors. And Larry was standing up courtside, going over a golf tip with McKechnie. And
which could be a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Again,
yes, it could be.
There was a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where Larry was sitting in those exact seats and he tripped Shaquille O'Neal. Like 20 years ago.
Shaq has to go to the hospital and miss his time, and Larry makes it up to him by giving him every single episode of Seinfeld on a VHS tape. That's how long Curb's been on there. But so I was that my fandom burned just as bright back then as it does now, and I'm like, I'm gonna go talk to McKechnie in front of Larry. So now I have 1 degree of separation, and that will allow me to foist myself upon Larry.
Look at that. He's a genius. This is Dave. So I could do this for another hour. I'm just going to sit back.
So that day though, Larry is now just going through his golf routine. It's still an hour to tip off. Isn't even watching the guys work out. And it's before a playoff game, and Kobe's on the Lakers at that point. No, he's engrossed in his New York Times crossword puzzle, legs crossed, and I had to peer over the newspaper to get his attention. And I go into the whole, I'm the biggest fan, I love Seinfeld, I love
I'm sure he never hears that.
Yeah, and he just looks up at me and just goes, okay. So
okay.
Longtime NBA writer Ken Berger used to refer to that as the not okay is what he gave me. So that was the moment I had to live with for years and years. Yeah, just okay. So this time around, he's there very early once again. One of my buddies, Jim Porton, who's a longtime NBA photographer and content maker, and Jim Ice.
Jim Ice.
Yep. And
if you saw him, you'd recognize him. He's in 1,000 NBA shots.
The Jim Ice is a legend.
And Dan Wiki of the LA Times, both of them. I had already gone to the back to transcribe pregame quotes from JJ Redick, and they're out in the court and they see Larry there all by him lonesome, and they're both blowing up my phone. Come out to the court. And they're like, you got to do it, man. You this is your moment. And so I mustered up the temerity to approach him again. This time did not come in with the fan angle, did not reference that lost opportunity 16 years ago. I pitched him on a story. I'm not going to tell you what the story is on this podcast because hopefully the story comes to fruition.
We hope so.
But then I told him that when the Lakers were in Miami earlier in the season, I went to his show. He's with Curb being off air. He's doing kind of like a give back, an evening with Larry David, where he does a bit of a stand-up routine and then he brings on cast members from the show onto the stage and they do a Q&A. And I told him how weird some of the people in the audience were asking questions. And he started laughing that like full body chuckle that he has and saying, "Oh,
that's
yeah,
a humble
crazy, just crazy."
Oh yeah.
I mean,
by the way, we have this certain specific kind of laugh.
Okay. This time he made Larry David laugh.
Look, Dave, I didn't know what was going on the other day. I didn't know what you were doing. All I was told was live on the pod. I was told you were talking to Larry David, and I was like, Dave having a full conversation with Larry David is a top X moment in life, and the X is a single-digit number.
Oh yeah, it's going to be. Maybe we have kids someday. And
don't get in trouble, Dave. Don't get in trouble.
It's right on the level of the wedding.
See, now you're going to get in trouble.
I said right on the level. I didn't say it back.
Yes, sure.
But so there was some engagement in the pitch of that the story I wanted to do involving him. And it involves someone else in the NBA as well. And so we were leaving it. I said, okay, so I have a tacit agreement from you, and I'm going to take it to this other guy. So he goes, wait, there's no tacit agreement. Don't be trying to push me on this.
No tacit agreement.
Don't be trying to push this over the goal line. And I'm like, all right, can I say, is it percolating? Are we percolating here? He goes, okay, we're percolating. And then we shook hands. So, yeah.
Yeah, he should never win an Emmy for playing that character because it's just himself. He's not playing any character. Now, the writing, different story. All right. Look, it's Ari Emanuel's seats. He's got 4 seats right there. And that night, Larry David, Ari Emanuel, and Stephen A. Smith sat in those seats, and nothing happened. The most relevant thing that happened was Dave's conversation with Larry David before that. Unfortunately for the Knicks, on the court that night, something did interesting, newsworthy happen, and that was Jalen Brunson turning his right ankle. The Knicks, I don't think, announced it as a grade 2 sprain, Bontemps, but their press release implied that it was a grade 2 sprain. It's a multi-week injury.
Yeah, it wasn't great, and obviously, we've talked about it a lot. I mean, Jalen Brunson is everything for the Knicks, and his play in the clutch this year has been exemplary. He's carried an enormous load for them. We've talked a ton about, why I would probably have him 5th on my MVP ballot as of today because of the immense work he's done in clutch time all season for them. And if the Knicks don't have him they already don't have him for, I think John's reported at least a couple weeks. I mean, that looked like it could be easily the rest of the month. I mean, if he's out for that kind of stretch, you could be talking about the Knicks sliding back to 4th, to 5th, to 6th in the East pretty quick. And again, like we were talking about at the beginning of the pod with the Lakers and these other teams in the West, if the Knicks somehow wind up in the 4 or 5 in the first round and they avoid being on the same side of the bracket as Boston, I'm not saying they're going to beat the Cavs, but we have talked plenty about the matchup with the Celtics, and that we know it's going to go a certain direction. So if they can get Jalen Brunson back at some point and they can have him ready to go for the playoffs and they end up in the 4 or 5, maybe it's a blessing in disguise. But the Knicks could be in an awful lot of trouble without him. They're already starting to show some signs of wear and tear. They dropped a couple games in a row before he got hurt. Now without him, it's going to be very difficult to generate enough offense. And, we'll see what they look like over the next few weeks.
Well, this is what happens when you have – yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, Cat he brought nothing to the table that night. I recognize he had just spent some time away from the team dealing with a family friend passing away, and so he could have maybe not been in the best mental space to perform. I don't want to speculate, but they're going to need Cat to be much better than he was the other night for them to withstand this time.
Yeah. Jalen Brunson's been the number one performer in the clutch this season. He would be I haven't seen the numbers. He would be a strong favorite to win I think, unless you think I'm wrong.
Can't imagine somebody else is winning the award as of today.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, though, because one of the reasons why he is there is because whenever the Knicks are in a close game, the ball's in his hand and he does everything. And so when you lose that player, you're in real trouble. In fact, that's one of the things, the Cavs – I got it in, Bontemps. I got it in.
Got it in.
Cavs corner, baby. I'm here for a Cavs corner.
Yeah. See, listen, I wanted to do the pod for the listeners and viewers. I wanted to do the pod tonight. Brian was like, can't do it. Can't do it. I got things to do. We know he's going to be
flying to LA in a couple hours. That's why. Yeah, you act like I'm hosting a soiree.
So you stay. You're going to have some popcorn and soda. You're going to be locked in for Cavs Bucks pivotal game. Going to be a big game.
I will be in the air. I'm not even sure who's playing in that game for Milwaukee. It's a second night of a back-to-back. But the Cavs.
Everybody is playing.
Okay, good. The Cavs have a 13-game winning streak. The last 4 games they've barely won. Their last one.
Now you've jinxed them for sure. We're definitely going to wake up with the Bucks winning tomorrow after that.
Yeah. They won by 1 point in Charlotte on Friday night. And they're they're beating these teams that really, frankly, they should handle, like Chicago, the Heat. Heat was missing 3 starters. I know Portland's been better recently, but that game was at home. But the takeaway from those games is that they've won all those games in clutch time, and they've done it all different ways. There have been times when it's DeAndre Hunter being the player. There's been times where it's been Darius Garland. There's been times when it's been Donovan Mitchell. Kenny Atkinson has played different lineups, different strategies. They've done a whole bunch of different things. And so while I do think there's a few orange flags, not red flags, there's a few orange flags with the Cavs right now that are kind of getting hidden by this 13-game win streak. They have demonstrated throughout the year that they can go a whole bunch of different directions. And that's not something a team like the Knicks has demonstrated. So Jalen goes down and it just compounds the injury. So
100%.
And the Knicks just are, it's the same thing with the Nuggets. The Nuggets are not a deep team. So Aaron Gordon goes down and you just feel it so much more. The Knicks are not a deep team. You have a player go down and you just feel it a lot more. And to the Lakers to a certain extent, at certain positions, they have depth on the wings, but at certain positions they're thin. So again, Jackson Hayes goes down. All of a sudden you're leaning on Trey Jameson to play a lot more than you need him. And so that's what happens. So, teams that are in the middle of the contender pack are in the middle of the contender pack for a reason, but it's just the worst. You guys have covered teams before. When you're on a long road trip and a player gets hurt and then they had a game the next night, like the Lakers then the Knicks had to turn on and play the Clippers the next night. Of course, it just works out that way. Like, that's why you can never, in my opinion, evaluate a team during a long road trip. Like, if it's struggling, like sometimes during long road trips, stuff happens and you just take flesh wounds and you just got to kind of carry your way through. And so I would apply that to the Lakers over this next week, Dave, with their injury condition. And I apply it to the Knicks right now as they're dealing with it on this West Coast trip. So, all right. Bontemps has a game to cover. Dave has an off night in New York City. I'm not going to deny him that. Thank you to Rafa, our producer. Thank you to Bontemps and to McMenamin. Thank you for watching and listening to Hoop Collective. We'll talk to you later this week.